The Grand Orpheum Theatre, a ghost at the end of a forgotten street, its cracked facade told stories of erased grandeur. The wind carried faint, mournful applause. Legends clung to the Orpheum like dust. Locals whispered of dancing shadows and music with no orchestra. The theatre remembered every performance etched into its bones. They spoke of a presence guarding its domain. Passers-by saw flickering lights and heard tragic violin strains. The master of the show never left, ensuring the final curtain would never fall. The Grand Orpheum was a trap, waiting for its next performer. Sarah was an artist, and her soul thrived on the beautifully broken things of the world. Where others saw decay, she felt a magnetic pull. Her canvases were filled with images of forgotten places, rusting carousels, crumbling mansions, and overgrown cemeteries. The Grand Orpheum Theatre was the ultimate muse. The rumours surrounding it only added layers of irresistible mystique. She spent weeks researching the Orpheum's history, poring over old newspaper clippings and faded photographs. The tale of the Puppetmaster was the dark heart of the Orpheum's lore. He was said to have been a brilliant but reclusive puppeteer who loved his creations more than life itself. The legend claimed he discovered a way to grant them a terrible kind of immortality. For Sarah, this story was the final captivating piece of the puzzle. She imagined the Puppetmaster not as a monster, but as a tormented genius. She had to see it for herself. She had to enter. The day Sarah chose to enter was heavy and overcast. She stood before the Orpheum's chained doors. The building loomed. This was the point of no return. She pulled bolt cutters from her bag. With a snap, the chain fell. The doors creaked open, revealing darkness. Stale air rushed out. Stepping inside was like plunging into darkness. The door boomed shut, sealing her inside. The light revealed the grand, dusty lobby. The lobby opened into a cavernous auditorium. She pointed her light down at a wooden finger from a marionette. Sarah ventured deeper, the atmosphere growing colder. She felt a whisper emanating from the theatre itself. The whisper was cold, a greeting. The theatre was not empty, a dangerous space. The whispers pulled her toward the stage, becoming a faint voice. It spoke of Strings, the Puppetmaster. She had walked onto his stage. Awareness returned to Sarah, her back pressed against the hard wooden floor. The air tasted of dust. Her eyes fluttered open to absolute darkness, then a faint blue glow registered. It emanated from shimmering strings. They were wrapped around her wrists and ankles, binding her. She tried to move, but her limbs refused to obey. She was on the stage, now her prison. She understood with chilling certainty that she had become a puppet. The stage was set. Panic rose in Sarah as she struggled against the glowing bonds. The strings seemed to absorb her efforts, their radiant blue light pulsing. They felt alive, humming with a malevolent energy. She was being puppeteered, held in a state of suspended animation. A new fear began to dawn. She could feel them inside her mind, probing at the edges of her consciousness. These glowing bonds were instruments of control. They were preparing her for the performance to come. The creak of a floorboard made her freeze. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes straining in the darkness. Then a figure began to descend from the gloom, tall and impossibly thin, wrapped in a dark coat. Long, slender fingers were wrapped around a wooden crossbar. It was not a face, but a smooth, polished wooden mask with empty eye holes. This was the Puppetmaster, holding the instruments of her fate in his long, pale hands. He simply watched her, as if listening to her fear. She was an object to him. It had all led her to this moment. Sarah stared at the figure, the silent master of her fate. The emptiness of the mask's eyes. She felt a gaze that stripped her bare. Then he spoke. The voice seemed to emanate from the very air. The tone was smooth like polished wood, laced with a chilling reverberation. It was a voice that held no emotion. "You are so full of life," the voice murmured, "so much passion." He was not admiring her, he was appraising her soul. A resource to be harvested for his craft. It was obsession. Such a shame to let it fade, the voice continued. Such a waste. But here in my theatre, nothing is ever wasted. The Puppetmaster's words hung in the air. Sarah's mind reeled, trying to process the horrifying reality. She was to be preserved, her life force repurposed for his eternal performance. Her identity as an artist was now being twisted into justification for her own destruction. He saw her not as a fellow creator, but as a perfect living canvas for his masterpiece of control. What are you doing to me? The question burst from her lips, a raw, desperate cry that shattered the calm. It was a plea for reason in a place where reason had been abandoned. Her voice, hoarse with terror, echoed weakly. It was the cry of a mouse caught in the gaze of a serpent. The puppet-master's masked head tilted again, a slow, deliberate gesture of consideration. "Doing," the voice echoed, laced with condescension. "I am giving you a gift. I am granting you immortality. Your passion will not die with your flesh. It will live forever here on this stage. Art demands sacrifice, my dear." The words were spoken with the finality of unbreakable law. Blood, sweat, tears, a piece of the artist's soul. You, an artist yourself, should understand this. He was using her passion as a weapon against her, twisting her deepest beliefs into a cage. And you will make a fine addition to my collection. The word collection echoed in her mind, conjuring images of lifeless puppets, their souls trapped behind glass eyes, forever part of his silent, eternal audience. As the puppet master's words faded, a new sound began. A faint rustling grew, resolving into a distinct pattern, clapping. Not a thunderous roar, but a dry, hollow applause like wooden hands striking. The sound seemed to come from the darkness, an audience she couldn't see. Rhythmic, soulless, the applause of the dead. The applause wasn't for her performance, but a welcome. The trap, snapping shut, a promise of her future, forever bound to the stage. The applause faded, replaced by silence. Sarah lay trembling as the puppet master prepared to begin. With a subtle motion, he pressed a lever. The string on her wrist tightened. Her arm rose beyond her control. She fought, but the string overrode her will. The violation was total. The puppet master observed, satisfied. "There now. Let us begin." Another lever. Her leg bent, her head turned. The dance had started. Sarah, the unwilling star, was swept into a grotesque ballet. Sarah's body moved in the puppet master's grip, but her mind sharpened, searching for hope. Her eyes caught a subtle shift in the darkness beyond the stage, a change in the void. Shapes emerged in rows of theatre seats, figures, a real audience, silent, motionless, their heads tilted at unnatural angles. Sarah felt their gaze, 1,000 invisible threads binding her. She was the latest exhibit in a collection of broken souls. Forced to face the audience, Sarah saw the truth. The front row was filled with marionettes, their faces painted and lifeless. But the faces began to change, shifting into disturbingly human expressions. Sadness, terror, despair. Each puppet's face became a mask of its final emotion. These were not mere dolls, they were vessels for trapped souls. The whispers she'd heard were their voices, a chorus of the damned. Each face was a warning. Whispers filled the theatre, fragments of warning and regret drifting from the marionettes. "Run! Too late!" The voices were echoes, residual thoughts of the dead, a tapestry of despair. The whispers were a warning. Sarah's gaze locked on the marionettes, each a frozen tragedy. A ballerina, mouth open in a silent scream, a wooden tear staining her cheek. A comedian's smile twisted into terror, eyes wide with surprise. Each figure a performer, now a prop, art perverted into mockery. Sarah saw her future in their glassy eyes, a silent effigy. The whispers grew into a desperate chorus. "Fight him! Don't let him finish the dance, the strings feed on your fear." They urged her to break just one string. Their will sparked a flicker of hope. The puppet master faltered. In that distraction, Sarah saw her chance. Hope surged through Sarah, transforming fear into fuel. Her focus, break one string. She poured every ounce of her will into a single point of resistance, choosing the string on her right index finger. She fought it with her mind, focusing that fire where the string met her skin. She pushed her fear away and replaced it with pure, focused rage. Then, with a sound like a snapping violin string, it gave way. The control was broken. She flexed it, a small, triumphant gesture. She had fought back, and she had won. The moment her finger was freed, a wave of shock rippled through the theatre. Above her, the puppet master went rigid, radiating frustration. The broken string was an insult, the mask fixed upon her with a terrifying intensity. The strings began to glow with a ferocious intensity. The gentle pull became a crushing force. The puppet master's voice returned, sharp and cold. Run! But the theatre always wins. He tightened his grip, reminding her of the futility of her struggle. The searing pain was immediate, eclipsing the small victory she had just achieved. Sarah gasped as her body was arched into a taut, agonizing bow. The momentary hope she had felt was a cruel joke. She had merely provoked the beast, and now she was feeling its true power. Her brief act of defiance had changed the nature of the game. The glowing bonds that held her had become instruments of punishment. This was a crucifixion, and she was pinned to the stage under the full weight of his anger. The audience's collective gasp of hope was replaced by despair. They knew what happened when a puppet fought back. The puppet master's retaliation had plunged them back into their shared prison. As the assault intensified, something unexpected happened. The whispers returned, a chorus of ghostly consciousnesses seeking refuge. It was a terrifying sensation, the feeling of lost souls merging with her own. Their pain became her pain. It was a crushing weight. This influx of shared experience began to fortify her. It transformed her into the vessel of a legion. The whispers had found a voice, and the struggle was about to enter a new phase. Fueled by trapped souls, Sarah planned a desperate gambit. They whispered of the puppet master's connection to the theatre. His control was absolute, but his senses diffused. The plan: create a chaotic diversion, forcing him to divert his attention. The souls revealed the theatre's weak points, the counterweights. They gave her the blueprints to attack from within. She focused their collective will, channeling their energy outwards. She pushed their energy towards a massive sandbag. The puppet master sensed the shift, attacking her mind. It became a contest of wills. The straining rope drew the puppet master's attention. The air grew thick with rage. This wasn't defiance, it was an attack. The puppet was trying to burn down the house. His focus shifted to the threat against his stage. The pressure on Sarah vanished as the puppet master reinforced the rope. It was a shocking release, leaving her gasping. She was free from his psychic assault. The pain remained, but her mind was her own, crowded with whispers. "Now!" they screamed. While he is distracted, the heartstring, they showed her the central filament to her chest. Thicker than the others, its blue light pulsed like a grotesque heartbeat. This was the anchor, binding her soul to his will. Breaking it would be catastrophic. It was the conduit through which he would drain her life force. Summoning her strength, Sarah directed her will at this vital point. The puppet master, realizing his error, let out a silent roar. The duel escalated. He was fighting a war on two fronts. The heartstring vibrated violently, resonating through Sarah's bones. The theatre became a battleground for a war unseen. The air crackled with invisible energy as two powerful wills clashed. On one side, the puppet master, his ancient power rooted in the theatre. On the other, Sarah, a vessel for vengeful spirits, a force of rebellion. The heartstring hummed louder, shaking dust from the rafters, a manifestation of their struggle. The puppet master fought with cold efficiency, pulsing despair through the strings, trying to break Sarah's resolve. He flickered horrifying images, her body lifeless, her soul siphoned away. But the souls within her fought back, countering his despair with memories of life and freedom. They flooded her mind with warmth, taste, laughter, and love, everything he had stolen. They built a fortress of life, a bulwark against his nihilism. "He shows you the prison," they whispered. "We show you what lies beyond. Fight for that." The stage groaned, the heartstring fractured, the counterweight rope snapped. The puppet master was losing his grip, his attention divided. For the first time in a century, he was on the defensive. His perfect control fractured under the force of a will that refused to be broken. Seeing his control waver, the puppet master unleashed his most desperate defense. If he could not break her will, he would break her body. He abandoned the subtle attacks and resorted to raw, overwhelming physical force. With a silent roar of frustration, he poured his power through the stage itself. The wooden floorboards beneath Sarah began to warp and twist, rising up to crush her. The stage was coming alive, its ancient wood groaning as it became an extension of his will. Splinters erupted from the floor, pressing against her back and limbs, adding physical agony to her torment. The stage was attempting to absorb her, to pull her into its very structure, to make her a permanent part of the theatre. The strings now seemed secondary to the crushing embrace of the stage itself. It was the ultimate act of a cornered tyrant. If he could not control the puppet, he would simply destroy the vessel and reclaim the energy within it. The overwhelming physical assault shattered her concentration. The focused beam of her will fractured and dispersed. The cracks of white light on the string faded, its malevolent blue pulse returning. The diversion had failed. The collective gasp of the 100 souls in her mind was a wave of pure despair, only to be crushed by the raw physical power of the prison they all inhabited. The pressure was unbearable, a victim on a medieval rack. Her vision greyed out, consciousness threatening to flee. This was the true power of the Puppetmaster. The theatre itself. It was an enemy she could not fight. The stage was his kingdom, and within its walls his strength was absolute. Hope was finally brutally extinguished by the crushing grip of the stage. As Sarah teetered on the brink of unconsciousness, the pressure suddenly relented. The twisting floorboards settled, the splinters retracted. The tension in the strings lessened, returning to their firm control. The Puppetmaster, having proven his point, eased his grip. It was not mercy, but chilling confidence. He had weathered her rebellion. He had let her fight, let her hope, only to demonstrate how meaningless it all was. A soft chuckle echoed, the first emotion she'd heard from him besides anger. It was pure, condescending amusement. The chuckle was more demoralizing than any pain. It mocked her struggle, trivialized her defiance. The souls within her fell silent, their hope now bitter shame. "Such fire," the Puppetmaster whispered, returning to his calm tone. "Such a beautiful fire. It will make a wonderful addition to the embers of the collection." He was pleased. Her resistance made her a more valuable prize. A soul that fought so hard would burn brighter in his collection. Her defiance had only increased her value as a captive, ensuring her place as a centerpiece. The fight was over. Sarah's body was agony, her mind a cavern of despair. She had thrown everything, her will the power of 100 souls, the theatre's secrets, and it amounted to nothing. The theatre always wins. The words echoed, a final truth. Freedom was an illusion. Hope was a trap. The struggle was merely the most exquisite part of the performance before the tragic finale. The puppet goes limp on its strings. The stage was silent, except for the faint hum of the glowing strings. Sarah lay limp, her breath shallow, eyes glazed with the aftershock of pain and defeat. Above her, the Puppetmaster hovered in his shroud of darkness, the wooden mask betraying no hint of emotion, yet tension buzzed, the quiet before a storm. The Puppetmaster's voice, low and resonant, filled the theatre. Every artist must earn her place, and every show must have its game. Slowly, the strings loosened their grip, until at last she felt the stage beneath her back. The audience of marionettes seemed to hold their breath. Sarah struggled to sit, her body trembling. The Puppetmaster gestured. "The rules are simple, my dear," he said, each syllable echoing. "If you wish to leave, find the exit. I give you 10 minutes, but beware, everything in this house is my instrument. Every corridor, every door, every shadow, mine." This was no real chance at freedom, but a ritual designed to break hope. Sarah's fear returned, sharper now, tinged with an awful, desperate clarity. The stage lights flared, illuminating an archway. Beyond, a hallway yawned in hungry darkness. The strings fell away from her. Sarah could move, truly move, for the first time since awakening. The audience marionettes seemed to shift, their faces flickering with a mix of longing and warning. The Puppetmaster's voice drifted down. "Run, little artist. The game has begun." Sarah's legs wobbled as she stood, every muscle screaming. Without the string's control, her body felt alien, clumsy, numb, half wooden. She staggered toward the illuminated archway, drawn by the shimmer of possible freedom. Her footsteps echoed, each step punctuated by the distant clack of marionette hands. Her breath came in ragged gasps, as if the theatre itself were listening, savouring her fear. Beyond the archway, the corridor stretched on, lined with mirrors and faded velvet curtains. Sarah's reflection flickered, a pale, haunted figure, eyes wide with terror. Behind her, she caught glimpses of the marionettes' faces, their expressions twisted in silent warning. She pressed forward, heart pounding. pounding, the urge to run clashing with the certainty that it was all part of the puppet master's design. The sounds of the stage faded, replaced by a chorus of whispers urging her on or begging her to turn back. The corridor seemed to shift beneath her, the walls pulsing as if alive. The lights flickered in time with her heartbeat, and the air grew thick with the scent of old perfume and rotting wood. Every step forward felt heavier, as if invisible strings still tugged at her limbs. Sarah reached for a door at the end of the hallway. Her hand trembled as she touched the handle, cold, slick, resisting her grip. She twisted, pulled, and the door swung open to reveal another corridor identical to the last. The illusion of freedom crumbled. Panic rose in her throat as she realized the theatre was not a place but a maze, a living trap. The promise of escape was nothing but another act in the puppet master's endless show. The corridors twisted and coiled, folding back on themselves in impossible ways. Sarah ran, turned, doubled back, only to find herself at the foot of the same grand staircase. The same faded portraits leering from the walls. Every surface seemed to breathe, every shadow flickered with motion. The floorboards groaned beneath her feet, their whimpers mingling with the haunting creak of strings being drawn taut somewhere overhead. The labyrinth was alive, responsive, aware and cruelly intelligent. Her footsteps faltered as she rounded a corner and was greeted by the sight of herself, her own reflection seated in a velvet chair. It was her, but not her. Her hair like carved mahogany, skin painted porcelain smooth, eyes glassy and unblinking. The puppet version of herself smiled with a mouth painted in a permanent pleading frown. She stumbled backward, heart hammering, only to find the walls had closed in behind her. The whispers grew louder, now distinctly the voices of the marionettes. "You can't escape," they sang in a ghostly chorus. "He writes the script. You only perform." Each word crawled up her spine, cold and wet, feeding the rising tide of hopelessness. Sarah pushed forward, desperate to break the cycle, desperate to find a door, a window, any crack in the facade. But every passage led her back to the stage, to the footlights, to the waiting gaze of the puppet master. She realized with mounting horror that there were no exits in this theatre. Only entrances, only new roles to play. Each attempt at escape was woven into the performance, each moment of hope a carefully orchestrated cue. The labyrinth was more than architecture. It was a performance, and she the unwilling star. The puppet master's game was about making her believe that escape was possible, only to reel her back in for the next act. Sarah collapsed at center stage, breathless. The lights shifted as the puppet master descended. He moved with inhuman grace, mask tilting in an imitation of sympathy. "So close," he murmured. "You almost made it, Sarah." His tone was sinister in its gentleness. He knelt beside her. He reached out to offer a choice. In his hand, a single marionette string still pulsing with faint blue light. "I can make it easy," he whispered. "No pain, no fear. Surrender and you will never feel lost again. Your art will live forever on this stage. Immortality, in exchange for your will." The string dangled before her eyes, hypnotic. The audience of marionettes leaned forward, their glassy eyes shining. Sarah's mind reeled. The urge to give in was overwhelming. But then came the memory of the warnings, the rebellion. Her voice broke the silence. "I am not yours. I am not a puppet." The puppet master's mask tilted, unreadable. "You always say that," he replied. He withdrew the string and it faded to darkness. The game was never about escape, it was about choice, the agony of refusing it. The temptation had been refused, but the cost was everything. The stage faded to black as the puppet master rose. Strings flickered to life above, snaking down, wrapping around Sarah's limbs with gentle, practiced care. She did not resist this time, her strength gone. The marionettes began to clap, a slow, mocking ovation that filled the theatre with hollow echoes. The puppet master lifted her to her feet, his control effortless. The dance resumed, more tragic than before. Through the haze of exhaustion, Sarah saw the truth. The theatre was a trap that fed on hope, only to deny it at the last moment. The puppet master's game was endless, a masterpiece of psychological torment. The marionettes wept silent tears, their rebellions crushed. The strings pulled tighter, guiding her through the motions of a dance she would never master. Above, the Puppetmaster watched with cool satisfaction. The strings are pulling tighter. Freedom was an illusion. The show always goes on. As the curtain fell, the whispers lingered, promising that the cycle would begin anew. And for those still watching, this is only the beginning. As Sarah's struggle fades, the true nature of the Grand Orpheum is revealed. The theatre is an eternal ecosystem of despair, with the Puppetmaster at its heart. Sarah's journey was designed to strip away her identity. The illusion of escape is the Puppetmaster's cruelest tool, perfected over a century. He dismantles hope, forcing captives to participate in their damnation. Every path leads back to the stage. The show always goes on. Sarah's story, another layer in the theatre's legend. The theatre settles into a patient silence, waiting for the next act. The horror of the Grand Orpheum lies in the promise of a perverse and unending life. The Puppetmaster eternally locks his victims into their greatest despair. To be part of his collection is to be trapped forever in a state of living death. It is a damnation born of a twisted artistic vision. He represents the ultimate corruption of passion. His theatre is a closed loop. The story of Sarah is over, but the story of the theatre is not. The theatre itself stands as the final character, a silent, brooding predator that lies in wait. Ultimately, the tale serves as a dark parable about control and the seductive power of obsession. The theatre's final word is a whisper that carries out into the night. In conclusion, if you enjoyed this story, please like, comment and subscribe so you never miss a thing from Eerie Tales Studios.